General Hospital spoilers reveal that the return of Kelly Thiebaud as Britt to General Hospital is not merely a nostalgic callback or a fan-pleasing surprise, it is the spark igniting a long-dormant firestorm that now threatens to consume everything and everyone in its path. For months, even years, Port Charles had moved on from the tragic death of Britt, who had fallen victim to the Hook's brutal spree. Her absence left a gaping wound, particularly in the lives of characters like Liesl, Jason, and Maxie, whose connections to Britt were built on loyalty, redemption, and painful emotional transformation. But with Britt suddenly alive, walking again among the very people who mourned her, the landscape of the show has been irrevocably altered. This is not just about her survival, it's about the avalanche of repercussions that come with it. The very fabric of trust in Port Charles begins to unravel the moment Britt's return is revealed. Jason, a man who has struggled to rebuild his life after her loss, is now forced to confront the reality that what he believed was a definitive end was merely a manipulated illusion. For Liesl, who buried a child and lashed out at the world in grief, this revelation fractures her emotionally, reawakening guilt, confusion, and the maternal instinct to protect at all costs. Her past associations with dangerous figures, including Caesar and Alex, now echo louder, for it is clear that Britt's reappearance is not random. Someone orchestrated this return. Someone ensured her survival, concealed it, and waited for the perfect moment to drop the bomb. The mechanism of Britt's survival may be tied to the mysterious and morally ambiguous experiments linked to Henry Dalton's biotechnology initiative, a shadowy program rumored to dabble in cloning, memory transfer, and radical life preservation. If Britt was saved by such a project, the ethical and existential ramifications would be staggering. Who made the decision to revive her, and why? Was it Liesl herself, in a moment of desperation, who bartered with science to restore her daughter? Or was it part of a larger scheme, where Britt's life becomes a pawn in a far-reaching game involving institutions more powerful and secretive than the WSB itself? With Britt's return, old romances are rekindled under treacherous conditions. Jason's connection to her, deep and complicated, flares back to life at the worst possible time. His alliance with Carly is already fractured from recent chaos, and the return of Britt, whose love for Jason transcended even her darkest moments, adds a volatile new dimension. Carly, seeing the emotional hold Britt still has on Jason, finds herself reeling from jealousy and betrayal. For her, this isn't just about another woman returning. It's about history repeating itself in the most humiliating and destabilizing way. But the chaos doesn't stop there. Britt's reappearance directly threatens Drew, who has now aligned himself with Willow and attempted to reframe his public image. With Britt's knowledge of secrets surrounding Peter, Liesl, and other WSB classified operations, she may carry information capable of dismantling Drew's carefully constructed facade. Worse, her memories may have been altered or suppressed during her time away, raising the question of whether the woman who returned is entirely herself or something engineered to sow confusion, pain, and division. The consequences of her return begin to mount rapidly. Maxie, having found peace in the wake of Britt's death, spirals emotionally when forced to reconcile her grief with Britt's second chance. Nina, who once shared a close friendship with Britt, finds herself questioning the limits of trust, especially as she battles her own demons and the possibility that Britt may expose yet another buried truth involving Nathan. And as for Liesl, her past comes crashing into her present as she's forced to explain how much she truly knew and whether she played a role in Britt's disappearance. Her silence, whether by choice or design, may condemn her in the eyes of her loved ones. This return has all the markings of a masterstroke in psychological warfare. Every thread of Britt's reappearance seems carefully pulled to unravel key figures in Port Charles, particularly the Corinthos family. The timing, the silence, the shock, it all points to a larger scheme. Could this be the work of a shadowy enemy targeting the town's most powerful figures from within? Britt's return could be the distraction needed to execute a larger plan, and already, signs of unraveling are everywhere. The public reaction is equally divided. Some rejoice at her return. Others recoil. The media in Port Charles begins speculating wildly, about science gone too far, about cover-ups, and about what it truly means when the dead walk again. Protests begin to form outside General Hospital as ethical questions ignite fury. Families with loved ones lost to tragedy now demand answers. If Britt could return, why not others? What criteria determine who is saved and who is left to rot in the ground? The hospital board faces crisis. Legal systems are tested. And moral panic begins to ripple through the community. As the dust continues to swirl, Britt becomes both a symbol of hope and a harbinger of destruction. Her presence reminds everyone of what has been lost, what has been hidden, and what might still be manipulated. Liesel's own breakdown becomes public, as she is torn between celebrating her daughter's return and fearing the cost of that miracle. Jason's stoicism begins to crack, showing signs of vulnerability and emotional conflict he cannot suppress. And Drew, ever the opportunist, begins strategizing how to turn Britt's return into either a shield or a weapon. The truth is, Britt's survival could have been an accident. But her return was anything but. Someone planned this. Someone waited. And now that she's back, the chessboard has been flipped, and every player must question not only their next move, but whether they're even still playing the right game. The emotional devastation, the political backlash, the ethical chaos, these are only the beginning. The return of Britt marks not a chapter reopening, but an entirely new book filled with rewritten rules and blood-stained margins. The story is no longer about life and death. It's about control, manipulation, and the terrifying reality that in Port Charles, even the dead can be used to haunt the living. The shocking return of Kathleen Gati as Liesel, paired with Kelly Thiebaud's reprisal of Britt, is igniting an emotional wildfire in General Hospital that no one in Port Charles is prepared for. This mother-daughter reunion isn't just a sentimental plot point, it is a seismic shift that threatens to upheave years of layered storytelling, buried secrets, and half-healed wounds. After losing Britt to the hook and watching Liesel descend into grief-driven vengeance, fans had resigned themselves to the tragedy. But now, with both women back in the same orbit, the writers are handing audiences one of the most volatile, emotionally charged, and narratively explosive pairings the show has seen in years. Liesel, whose identity has always been defined by her passionate, if morally ambiguous, love for her children, is now staring face to face with a daughter she buried. Her reaction isn't simple joy or relief. It is a symphony of guilt, awe, and dread. Was Britt's return the result of Liesel's own behind-the-scenes dealings? Has she always known Britt was alive and hidden the truth for reasons we've yet to discover? Or is Liesel, like everyone else, a victim of a much deeper deception? Her return alongside Britt marks one of the most jarring narrative shifts in recent memory because it suggests that death, grief, and memory in Port Charles are far more malleable than anyone ever believed. For Britt, awakening into a world where her mother is still fighting to reclaim power and influence, where Jason has drifted into a sea of complications, and where Peter's legacy still lingers like smoke in the air, is nothing short of psychological whiplash. The reunion with Liesel won't be smooth. It will be filled with accusations, tears, confessions, and above all, truths long overdue. And in the middle of it all lies the question, who brought them back, and why now? With their reunion comes a wave of change. Britt and Liesel were never passive characters, they've always driven storylines, disrupted alliances, and challenged the moral compass of everyone around them. With both women alive and emotionally recharged, General Hospital is poised for an era of transformation. Britt's medical knowledge and scars from survival will undoubtedly give her power and vulnerability in equal measure. Liesel's political savvy and ability to navigate both the criminal underworld and medical elite make her a double-edged sword. Together, they may form a new alliance, not just as mother and daughter, but as strategic forces in a town desperate for clarity and revenge. Britt may seek answers about who manipulated her return, perhaps she was cloned, hidden in a secret facility, or frozen and revived. Whatever the case, it raises alarms about science, ethics, and human identity. Liesel, ever the calculating physician, may know more than she's saying, and her reunion with Britt may spark investigations, unraveling dangerous secrets tied to organizations like the WSB or beyond. Their presence reignites old storylines and creates the perfect storm for new ones. The people who loved Britt, Maxie, Brad, Jason, will now have to process her reappearance and reevaluate everything. The people who feared or loathed Liesl, Anna, Valentine, Scott, will wonder what she's capable of now that she has everything to lose again. Most of all, the return of the Westbourne women throws every power dynamic in Port Charles into question. This is not just a family story. It's a reckoning. It's a transformation of grief into fury. Death into vengeance, silence into voice. As Britt and Liesl re-establish their bond, they may also become one of the most dangerous and unpredictable alliances the show has ever seen. Liesl has always been willing to kill for those she loves. Britt, now hardened by whatever horrors she endured, may finally be ready to fight beside her mother rather than against her. And that possibility is terrifying, for everyone. Their reunion is already rewriting expectations and setting up what could become the next major arc of General Hospital. A mother and daughter with nothing left to lose, reclaiming their place in a world that tried to bury them both. Every scene they share moving forward will be layered with history, trauma, and newfound strength. Together, they don't just represent a return from the dead. They are the warning shot of what's to come. Britt Westbourne's return to Port Charles doesn't unfold with quiet reunions or subtle revelations, it detonates like a bomb, shattering any illusions of peace that lingered in the wake of her presumed death. The moment she steps back into town, all eyes turn to her, not simply because she's alive, but because she brings with her a truth so devastating, so intricately buried, that it threatens to unravel the very core of multiple families. With a calm yet haunted demeanor, Britt drops the first of two seismic revelations. Rocco, long believed to be the son of Dante Falconeri and Lulu Spencer, is in fact her biological child. The silence that follows this announcement is deafening, because the implications are immediate and life-altering. She claims that before her death, she had been pregnant in secret, protected and hidden by a clandestine WSB operation coordinated by none other than her own mother, Liesl Albrecht. According to Britt, she gave birth in Australia under a false identity. The baby handed off in an adoption-like arrangement that was orchestrated with lies, falsified documents, and a web of deception spun so tightly that even Dante was convinced the child was his. Britt refuses to name the father outright, but cryptic comments suggest it could be someone still within Port Charles's orbit, Dante himself, Jason Morgan, or even Valentine Cassadine, all potential fathers, all men with dangerous histories and complex ties to Britt. As this paternity firestorm erupts, the ripple effects spread like wildfire. Lulu, trapped in her long-term coma, becomes a central figure in a looming custody battle. Olivia, Dante, and Laura all find themselves dragged into a bitter legal and emotional war that reopens old wounds and sows new ones. But just as the town is struggling to process the truth about Rocco, Britt unleashes the second revelation, one that is far more personal, far more dangerous. Her love for Jason never faded in death, instead, it mutated, deepened, and darkened. She returns with a fragile emotional state, clinging to a memory of Jason that no longer exists in reality. He has moved on, emotionally and perhaps romantically, but to Britt, he remains the last anchor to a time when she still had hope. She begins showing signs of obsession, shadowing Jason's movements, appearing at his home without invitation, engineering coincidences that allow her to remain close to him. It doesn't take long for Jason and those around him to sense that something is deeply wrong. Britt is not just emotionally wounded, she's unstable, and potentially dangerous. Liesl Albrecht, who once manipulated the world for the sake of her daughter, now finds herself caught in an agonizing position. For the first time in her life, she cannot justify or contain Britt's behavior. She sees the cracks in Britt's psyche, the erratic speech, the paranoia, the fierce possessiveness over Jason, and she realizes that this is no ordinary case of heartbreak. Something more insidious is at work. Liesl suspects that during Britt's time away, Possibly while in the custody of rogue WSB factions or under the influence of an experimental mind control project, her daughter was psychologically damaged or programmed. She begins investigating quietly, reaching out to Anna Devane and even seeking Victor Cassidy's old files in desperation. Liesl knows that if Britt spirals any further, she won't just destroy herself, she'll drag Jason and Rocco down with her. Meanwhile, Jason is pulled between empathy and fear. He remembers the woman Britt used to be, the one who risked everything for love, who once faced death with courage and humor. But the woman who stands before him now is volatile, unpredictable, and growing more aggressive by the day. As she makes veiled threats about anyone who stands between them, Emma, Daisy, even Liesl, Jason is forced to consider restraining orders, or worse, a mental health intervention. Liesl pleads with him for time, hoping to uncover the truth about what happened to Britt before they lose her completely. Yet time is slipping away fast. Britt's attachment to Jason intensifies to the point that she begins to believe they are already together, rewriting conversations in her head, misinterpreting kindness as romantic reciprocation, and lashing out when reality doesn't conform to her delusions. Port Charles, ever a town built on secrets and second chances, braces for the inevitable implosion. The custody battle over Rocco threatens to destabilize the Spencer and Falconeri families, while Britt's unraveling mental state leaves Jason vulnerable in ways he never anticipated. Even those who once supported Britt, Maxie, Brad, even Terry, begin to distance themselves, unsure of what to say or how to help. Liesl, torn between maternal love and moral responsibility, prepares for a last resort option, to have Britt committed if she poses a danger to herself or others. The story of Britt's return was never going to be simple, but no one could have predicted just how far-reaching the consequences would be. Now, with two explosive plotlines converging, Britt's claim to Rocco and her psychological descent, General Hospital gears up for one of the most emotionally charged arcs in recent memory. Questions remain unanswered. Who is Rocco's true father? Can Britt be saved before she does something irreversible? Will Liesl's love be enough to rescue her daughter from the darkness? Or will Jason be forced to end the nightmare himself? In Port Charles, nothing stays buried forever, and when the past returns, it often comes with a vengeance. The sudden and shocking return of Britt Westbourne has ignited a firestorm in Port Charles, not just because she was presumed dead, but because her reappearance shatters the fragile web of lies, illusions, and legacies that had been carefully woven in her absence. What intensifies this already volatile situation is the simultaneous re-emergence of her mother, Dr. Liesl Albrecht. A woman who once wielded quiet but potent influence and who now seems intent on reclaiming her standing with a force that Port Charles is ill-prepared to reckon with. Their reunion is not merely a sentimental family moment, it is a seismic event that sends tremors through every institution, alliance, and power structure within the town. For too long, the Westbourne Albrecht family had been regarded as broken remnants of WSB scandals, medical misconduct, and tragic losses. But now, that narrative is being rewritten with precision and vengeance. The implications of Britt's return are staggering. Long believed to be a victim of the Hook killer, her survival alone raises troubling questions about how her disappearance was handled, who covered it up, and whether she was hidden away intentionally. But more explosive than the logistics of her survival is the emotional and political baggage she brings with her. She is not the same woman who disappeared months ago. She is emboldened, haunted, and burning with a need for reckoning. And at the center of her rage lies the truth about Rocco, truths that have been buried, manipulated, or outright stolen. If Britt is indeed Rocco's biological mother, as new whispers suggest, then everything changes. Her claim reopens custody debates, inheritance discussions, and shatters the very fabric of the family narratives Jason, Dante, Lulu, and even Anna once clung to. It also paints Britt not as a tragic victim, but as a mother wronged by fate and deception. Liesl, too, is not simply returning to grieve or console. She has come back with purpose, meticulously calculated, deeply personal, and utterly transformative. Her professional credentials, once stripped and mocked, now serve as weapons. Her connections within the medical and legal communities become the very levers with which she begins exerting influence again. She's already begun challenging the legitimacy of several hospital board decisions, especially those related to Britt's former suspension and termination. Arguing not only for reinstatement but retroactive reparations. She speaks now not just as a mother but as a strategist. Intent on restoring her family name and ensuring that the Westbournes are no longer exiled to the margins of Port Charles society. But perhaps the most terrifying element of this alliance is that Liesl and Britt are no longer fractured or emotionally volatile in the way the town remembers them. They are united, calm, collected, and devastatingly focused. The once wayward daughter and the once overbearing mother have found mutual respect in survival and suffering. Britt's experiences in exile have sharpened her resolve. And Liesl's isolation has taught her the cost of silence. Together, they begin to systematically dismantle the protective walls around those who failed them, whether by betrayal, by neglect, or by quiet complicity. Jason Morgan, long seen as a protector, now finds himself at the edge of a storm he didn't anticipate. His bond with Britt, one forged in tenderness and cut short by her supposed death, is no longer a sanctuary. It is a battlefield. Britt's mental state, however, remains a question mark that only deepens the chaos. Her trauma is evident, her moments of calm are too deliberate, her eyes too haunted, her words too precise. Liesl, ever the vigilant mother, sees the cracks forming beneath her daughter's carefully constructed facade. Jason sees it too, and though he tries to pull Britt back from the brink, it's clear that the woman he loved is now consumed by layers of pain, betrayal, and a desire for control. Her decisions, particularly around Rocco, teeter on the edge of logic and obsession. She believes she must reclaim her son to restore a part of herself that was stolen. But in doing so, she risks alienating not just Dante, but also unleashing legal and emotional warfare that could collapse several families. And yet, the most dangerous aspect may be what Liesl and Britt are now willing to do together. Liesl has already begun reviewing the medical records around Rocco's birth, consulting her old contacts within the WSB's biological registry programs, and demanding a private audience with hospital legal counsel. Rumors circulate that she has proof of medical tampering, documents that suggest a deliberate cover-up regarding Rocco's true parentage. If she brings these to light, the scandal will not only envelop Jason and Dante, but could also end careers, destroy marriages, and permanently rupture the Corinthos and Scorpio families. It's not revenge they're after, it's restoration. And that's what makes them so lethal. This isn't a vendetta based on rage, it's a calculated campaign rooted in justice twisted through pain. To further complicate matters, the community's response to their return is fragmented. Some welcome them with open arms, grateful that Britt survived and hopeful for redemption. Others view their reappearance as a threat, a ghost from the past that should have remained buried. Carly, in particular, finds herself torn. She once saw Britt as a rival, later as a friend, and now as an enigma she can no longer place. Her alliance with Jason is tested daily as he wrestles with guilt, unresolved love, and an obligation to protect his existing family from a woman whose instability may yet spiral. Meanwhile, Liesl begins planting seeds at GH to reclaim a position of influence. She offers to lead rare disease research initiatives, petitions to oversee a new ethics board, and begins subtly sowing distrust toward those who kept her daughter in the dark. But beneath all the professional maneuvering lies a more intimate storm, one centered on Britt's deteriorating psyche. Her grief, masked behind ambition, begins surfacing in terrifying ways. She speaks to herself. She stares at pictures of Rocco for hours. She lashes out at those who question her motives, and at night, she cries in the sterile corners of GH as if trapped in memories she cannot escape. Jason, watching her unravel, tries to help, but is pushed away at every turn. Liesl pleads for him to stay near her daughter, but even she cannot deny the signs of psychological fracture beginning to emerge. And with Britt holding on so tightly to the idea of reclaiming Rocco, it's clear that something inside her is breaking. In the weeks that follow, Port Charles begins to change. The Westbourne Albrecht name is once again spoken in hushed tones. Court proceedings begin to stir. GH's staff grows divided. Families brace for the fallout. Some whisper that Britt is back from the dead to bring life to her lineage. Others claim she's come to bury it all once and for all. And through it all, Britt and Liesl stand together, shoulder to shoulder, mother and daughter no longer lost in shame but armed with truth. Vengeance, and an unwavering demand to be seen, heard, and respected. Whatever comes next, one thing is certain, their return is not the end of a mystery, but the beginning of a reckoning. And Port Charles will never be the same.